what the prison industrial complex really means. In 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed, which allowed for slavery to continue only in prison. After the Civil War, the South's economy was in a shambles. Therefore, Southern state governments initiated the Black Codes, which made it illegal for black men, not white men, but black men, to loiter, to break curfew, to participate in vagrancy, to have weapons, or to not be able to prove that they were working. And to accompany these black codes, the convict leasing system was enacted, which allowed private companies like railways and mines, and plantations to use the prison labor, the black prisoners. In 1883, 10% of Alabama's revenue was brought about by the convict leasing system. 10 years later, in 1893, 73% of his income was derived from it. The sad thing about the convict leasing system was that, unlike during slavery when the owners had to protect their investment, they didn't have to with the convict leasing system, because if the worker died, they could just get another one and it wouldn't cost them anything. In fact, in 1873, 25% of black convict leasing prisoners died. Their death rate was 10 times higher than that of non-convict leasing prisoners. One of the reasons why they died early deaths was because they were forced to fight by some of the prison guards and the wardens, sometimes to the death, for their enjoyment. And the private companies often had their own secret graveyards for the convict leasing prisoners. Eventually, the convict leasing system gave way to the chain gang, and instead of the black prisoners working for private companies, they would work for the state governments. At the same time, over 2,000 blacks were lynched between 1865 and 1877. 3,446 blacks were lynched between 1882 and 1968. So while many black men were forced to work for nothing, 25% of them were dying in prison. Other blacks, including women, were being lynched every 2 or 3 days. Now, fast forward to nowadays, we have what I call is a system of government social engineering. Blacks are about 13% of the population in the United States, but 38% of the prison system. More than, at the same time, while blacks are being overrepresented in prisons, more than 10,000 people die every year from fatal drunk driving accidents. Fatal drunk driving accidents in 2006, whites caused 24,816, and blacks caused only 4,511. When I look at the news every night locally here in Sacramento, I notice that rarely is a fatal drunk driving accident caused by a black person. It's usually caused by a white person or a Hispanic person. And just about every week there's a fatal drunk driving accident in Northern California. And that's not counting all of the people who are the white people, to be specific, who are driving drunk. When I looked up the DUI, I typed in DUI, drunk driving under the influence, on Google. What came up next to it was lawyers, courses, classes, etc. In other words, ways to get out of drunk driving for these white people, while black people are being swooped up more than they should be for other laws, and I'll get into that in a second. Whites use drugs more than blacks, but blacks are incarcerated for using drugs 6.5 times more than whites. Again, this is social engineering. And the reason why is because I'm a retired military police, and I know that it's officer discretion if you're going to arrest someone or if you're going to let them go. There was a guy that was in the Army with me, a white guy. He told me that he went somewhere to another state and he ended up having sex with a minor. And he said that he got caught in the room with her by the cops. I don't know why they caught him, but he was coming from Ohio. She was somewhere on the East Coast. And they let him go. The white guy let him go. I know a white young lady whose father is an alcoholic, a severe alcoholic. She said that the police let him go often. They don't arrest him for drunk driving. So the point is, our laws are made so that black people will go to prison and white people will not. Because if the laws were such that for drunk driving, which I think should be a felony, and smoking marijuana, shouldn't be much of anything. If drunk driving was a felony, the court, instead of letting them off with lawyers, getting lawyers after the 4th offense, because of this severity of the crime, I think it should be a felony, and I think that these people should be going to prison for it, at least a year. And if that were the case, the prisons would be filled with white people instead of black people. But you see, many millions of black people over the last few decades have been in prison for marijuana, while white people have not been in prison for driving under the influence. Even up to 4 times they can get off. For marijuana, the federal law is, even though several states have made marijuana possession not an offense, the first offense is a misdemeanor. The second offense is a felony. So again, you can see how marijuana, as I said, blacks are arrested for 6.5 times more than whites are, even though whites smoke it more than blacks. And whites are more of the population than blacks are too. The federal inmates earn between 90 cents and $4 a day in prison. The prisoners, some of the companies that they work for are McDonald's, Wendy's, Walmart, Starbucks, Sprint, Verizon, Victoria's Secret, Fidelity Investment, JCPenney, Kmart, American Airlines, and Avis Car Rental. So we talked about how all of the black men were being sent to prison for doing nothing. These were just trumped up charges so that the state governments can make money off them. Likewise, I just showed you how blacks are being incarcerated at a highly unfair rate for relatively minor offenses, while white people are doing more harm to society, but they're not being incarcerated for what they're doing. While during the convict leasing system, I showed you that blacks were being lynched every other day or so. Likewise, nowadays, as you very well know, unarmed black people are being shot at a rate 3 times higher than white people. So what does all this mean? What it means is that this is genocide. What went on before was genocide, and what's going on now is genocide. And this is according to the UN definition of the term. According to the UN, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethical, racial, or religious group as such. Number 1, there are 5 different things that could qualify as genocide. Killing members of the group. Okay, we are during the convict leasing system after slavery. For many decades, blacks were being lynched in the South and even in the North, and the government didn't do anything about it. Nowadays, unarmed blacks are being killed at a rate more than 3 times the rate of white people, and the government is doing nothing about it. Number 2, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Going to prison would qualify for this, especially if it's done at an unfair rate. If the police, white police usually, go into black neighborhoods, just searching for black people that they can put in jail, and I just showed you that they'll let a white person off for doing more than black people do sometimes. And as you probably know, when New York had its stop and frisk law, blacks were being incarcerated or stopped and frisked at a much higher rate than whites were. But people in the know said that the people who were working on Wall Street, if the police would have checked their briefcases, they would have found cocaine because they needed it to stay awake because they were working such long hours. But since they weren't being checked, they weren't arrested. And Rikers, if I'm saying it correctly, Rikers Island, they have a system where because blacks are not able to afford bail, they stay at Rikers Island for a year or so before they go to court. Same thing is going on here in California, in Los Angeles. And there was one minor young man. He was there for years before he went to court, and he committed suicide, so causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Number 3, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. The prison, of course, would be those conditions calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. I've never been to prison, but from what I understand, it's a horrible place to be. People are killed in prison. Men are raped in prison. So by unfairly targeting black men, the United States is guilty of genocide. Number 4, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Sending young black men to prison is preventing births within our group. I don't think I need to explain why. Last one, I don't think it applies to us, but forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. So that's my take on the previous prison system, the convict leasing prison system, and today's prison industrial complex, both of which are types of genocide against black people.